What's up, guys? I hope y'all are having a great day today, just full of so much positivity and happiness, dude, because today on the chopping block, we have the latest first-party AAA banger from PlayStation, and that, of course, is none other than Ghost of Yotei.
I'm sorry! I'm sorry!
To your wings!
Or maybe it's Ghost of Yotei. I don't know. I'm not that big of a weeb. But the point of the matter is Ghost of Yotei is a ghost of a better game that came before it previously. And on top of that, it is a carbon copy of a worse game that came out earlier this year in the form of Assassin's Creed Shadows. What we're dealing with here is yet another Sony story slop title with their trademark lay heckin' revenge bad, dude, storyline, because we definitely need another one of those, man. I mean, even IGN is getting tired of this shit at this point.
I'm a huge fan of PlayStation's first-party offerings. They've come to embody the sort of cinematic adventures I've always looked for when sitting down with a controller in my hand, feeling like genuine blockbuster events meant to be savoured. But where in the past this brand of glossy storytelling felt like new ground being trodden, I can't help but feel that recently it's become the well-worn road. It's not just that all of PlayStation's major releases adhere to the now trademark third-person cinematic stylings. It's that the stable of developers has become seemingly obsessed with stories that explore the exact same themes, grief and revenge. And I'm starting to get a little tired of it.
When you've lost literally the game's journalist outlet that has glazed every single subsequent release for the past decade plus, you know something is running amok here, because this is the same recycled story that we've seen time and time again from AAA game developers, especially from PlayStation, in games like God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, and of course, most famously, The Last of Us Part 2. And now Ghost of Yotei joins that list of games that have to reinforce the idea that revenge is actually bad, dude. I mean, even the final chapter of this game spells it out for the idiots in the back. I mean, if you want to talk about subtlety being dead, there's case in point, but in other parallels to other Sony-related properties like The Last of Us Part 2, the game even ends with two women raising another man's child at the close of the game. I shit you not. And the gameplay is pretty much a copy pasta from the original game with some minor tweaks that we will talk about when we get to that, but overall, man, this feels like a literal Control-C, Control-V situation with Ghost of Tsushima. I can see why Sony was talking about why the budget for this particular game was a lot lower than their other titles, because this really does feel like an unwanted DLC to Ghost of Tsushima in all the worst ways possible. And it just is yet another game that follows the Ubisoft open world gameplay format that really just shouldn't have. In all honesty, I think this game would have been a lot better if it was linear. The open world adds almost nothing to it, and the fact that you can instantly travel around the world with instantaneous load times really reinforces the fact that you don't really miss out on having to ride through the environment, because they're empty, desolate wastelands half the time. Sure, you might encounter a pack of enemies every once in a while, or yet another collectathon activity to go and interact with in order to get a skill point or increase your health, but there's nothing that actually feels worth exploring other than just checking a box in order to get your next upgrade. On top of that, you have an obnoxious main character that was obviously chosen for her political alignments, which I'm not even going to get to. 100 people have already covered that at this point. But just take a glimpse at the two voice actresses. There is a reason why in a game set in feudal Japan, they chose to not use the native Japanese speaker in order to be the face and voice of the character and then use English dub after the fact. There is a very deliberate reason why they chose this woman over the other one, because obviously one is far more attractive than the other, and the chuds don't deserve any attractive women in their Western video games. So I'm sure that's the reason why the character looks the way that she does. And speaking of which, her voice is absolutely horrible in this game, especially during flashback sequences.
Today we return to the basics.
Why?
Because a blade without a strong core will shatter.
I am ready to learn.
Seriously?
But before I get into too much autistic detail here, should you go out and buy Ghost of Yotei? Obviously not, man. This is yet another Sony Slop title that will be free in PlayStation Plus in a year or two max, that honestly, unless you're really just itching for the sequel to Assassin's Creed Shadows, there's not really any reason to go out and buy this right now. I mean, shit, you could just go buy Assassin's Creed Shadows, and at least you would get the comedic relief of the Yakubian samurai. But I don't know, man. This to me just feels like a very unnecessary sequel. I don't really think it does anything better than the first game other than some minor gameplay tweaks. And overall, I just found this game to be very formulaic and boring. Like I had seen this before countless times, which previously this year I've played a game that is damn near identical gameplay and story-wise to Ghost of Yotei in the form of Assassin's Creed Shadows. So would I recommend going out and buying this game? Obviously not. That is your little TLDR here. This is yet another game that if you just wait and pick up for dirt cheap on a sale, you might have fun with. Otherwise, I think if you rush out, spend $70 on it, you're probably going to be disappointed. There are better ways to spend your money. But anyway, we'll go ahead and kick off this review by talking about the gameplay, because the gameplay is definitely going to be the shortest section in this video, because really it's pretty much a copy-paste of Ghost of Tsushima. You do have different weapons that replace the stances, and you can also pick up dropped enemy weapons and throw them. You have a couple additional tools at your disposal, but overall, the gameplay, which is 80% walking, talking, and climbing rocks, is damn near identical to Ghost of Tsushima. This really does feel like a copy-paste job. Now, granted, it's in the same franchise, so I'm not going to be too negative about that aspect, but if you were hoping for some massive gameplay elevation or evolution in one game to the next, you're not getting that here. This feels very, very recycled, and they did the bare minimum in order to differentiate it just in the slightest bit so that Jin and Atsu don't feel like the exact same character to play as. And like I mentioned, this is another Sony game, massive air quotes, where about 80% of your time is spent walking, talking, and climbing, like I mentioned, and about 20% of it's spent in combat when it comes to the overall story aspect of the game. Granted, if you do the side activities, I feel like the ratio is probably about the same, man. There is a lot of dialogue, lots of cutscenes, and lots of walking segments in this game. So grab a pillow and a blanket, because you might actually need it. It is a Sony game after all. And of course, the gameplay wouldn't be complete without everyone's favorite ghost ability, which is comically bad in this game, I must say.
I'm sorry! I'm sorry!
To your wings!
But one of the biggest things you'll notice that sticks out in your head as you're playing through this game, especially if you're like me and you played Assassin's Creed Shadows earlier this year, is the traversal in every aspect of this game feels like Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, granted, Assassin's Creed Shadows probably looked at Ghost of Tsushima and copied a lot of shit that they did with that game in order to imitate it, because Ubisoft is anything but original, man. So, to its credit, I'm not necessarily saying that it's Assassin's Creed that is the innovator here, but if you have played both games, I would feel like that you would be challenged. If you turned the UIs off completely and just looked at these two games side by side, you would almost feel like you're playing the exact same game in either instance. I mean, the only difference is obviously Atsu has different weapons than what Naue had access to in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but the games feel pretty damn similar, man. It would be very, very hard to blindly distinguish between the two. And unfortunately, like Assassin's Creed Shadows, Ghost of Yotei is paired with an equally empty, bland, and lifeless open world with the typical checklist activities in the form of mini-games and events in order to gain upgrades and skill points. You literally have a mini-game that involves you stroking a guitar. No, I'm not fucking joking. You're flicking coins, chasing foxes, chasing after birds, painting with the touchpad, and stopping by the hot spring for some good old-fashioned gaming fun.
Sometimes I wish I had company other than my own thoughts. Then people open their mouths, and they talk and talk and talk. Then I remember why I'm alone.
You know, say what you will about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth having too many minigames, at least their minigames were fun. Now, you also have your typical Ubisoft outpost capture events from Far Cry, which you can capture from the Saito forces and turn it over to the Matsumai clan, which is the friendly faction in the game. But generally speaking, man, if you have played Assassin's Creed Shadows, even the side activities are almost identical in this game, which, again, I know Assassin's Creed Shadows was copying the homework of Ghost of Tsushima to a very high degree, but if you have played both of these games in the same year, you are going to get worn out and bored of Ghost of Yotei pretty fucking quickly, unless you were the world's biggest Assassin's Creed Shadows fan, which I don't really think there was too many of those. The one positive I will say in regards to the open world is it does look visually appealing. Like, at first, you're going to take in the scenery 100%. Like, it is a genuinely beautiful game to look at times, but it quickly fades when you realize you're just riding through the same empty environment over and over and over and over again. Now, luckily, the different zones of the game all do look visually distinct, which I did like that aspect. And one of my favorite things about this game, which I have nothing but kind things to say about it, is the fast travel system is insanely generous and instantaneous, man. You can teleport from one side of the map to the other with literally the blink of an eye. Like, the SSD magic that Sony loves to talk about in their games is definitely alive and well, and I was genuinely impressed by how quickly and effectively fast travel did work. And overall, the game is very well polished. I did not encounter any game-breaking bugs, glitches, performance issues, or anything during my time playing this game. Overall, they did an absolutely fantastic job of providing a gameplay experience that we should come to expect from developers from a technical standpoint. So I just want to give some positivity on that particular point, because in an age of unpolished, unfinished AAA video games, this is definitely an exception to that rule. So good job to Sucker Punch and the team who worked on this game. I just wish, you know, the story and the actual campaign that went along with it was actually worth experiencing, but from a gameplay and technical perspective, the game works as intended, which should be the norm. Unfortunately, it is not. So I guess good job on that one. But really, that's all I wanted to say about the gameplay. There's really not too much to discuss here. Again, it's pretty much Ghost of Tsushima, but instead of stances, you have different weapons that you use in rock, paper, scissors combat. You have a couple new tools at your disposal, but for the most part, if you played that game, this is pretty much identical to that. So yeah, moving on from the gameplay, I guess we'll go ahead and get right into the meat and potatoes of this review, like any other Sony game, and that, of course, is the story. When it comes to the story of Assassin's Creed wait, we're talking about Ghost of Yotei here. Well, when it comes to the story of this particular game, there is a lot of controversy going around the right-wing sphere of the gaming community regarding the voice actress and face of the main character, and a lot of the very controversial shit she has posted on social media surrounding the LGBT community, and on top of that, you know, her allegiance to a domestic terrorist organization known as Antifa. But all of that aside, I think we have a perfect instance of Ghost of Yotei being yet another game that is more boring than it is woke. The wokeness of this game is not even scratching the surface when it comes to the cardinal sin of this title, and that is the fact that it is just genuinely yet another copy-paste Sony revenge bad storyline that genuinely will put you to sleep before it'll make you chuckle at just how comically woke it is. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a lot of woke themes throughout this game. Atsu is definitely a girl boss from start to finish.
Play something more lively. Better yet, put down that shamisen and dance.
You want to dance?
Haven't we shown you enough fun?
Go on. Give us a tune. Just fists. I don't need another bounty on my head.
Get up!
Typical samurai.
You.
Me.
She has literally fought in a war for 16 years straight prior to this game taking place. Whenever she interacts with men, she always has this very, like, distinct disdain in her voice. Like, you can tell that they're trying to position her character as a man-hater, and whenever she's interacting with women, she's bubbly, warm, and personable. On top of that, there is an entire subplot line in this game where you have to go and acquire the pistol, which basically boils down to a gun control good type storyline about why you shouldn't sell guns to normal people because they'll go and do bad things with it, and instead we should trust the good old government to do it for us. I mean, there's many instances, and I could spend a lot of time listing them off. So if you're looking for a game that does not have any woke shit in it, that is definitely not what you're going to find here. Now, do I think the woke shit is even center stage in the actual game itself, and especially the story? Not really, man. It's mainly just undertones. It is nothing as overtly woke as something like Silent Hill F that came out recently, or a game like Spider-Mid 2 that Sony released previously as well. So again, this is a case of more boring than woke, and generally just comes down to a shitty Assassin's Creed Shadows copy. And the same can be said for the actual storyline of the game itself. There is a lot of parallels between Naoe's story in Assassin's Creed Shadows and Atsu's story in Ghost of Yotei. So if you've played both, you're gonna notice a lot of similarities. But you play as a girl named Atsu, whose family gets killed by a feudal Japanese lord by the name of Saito in his Yotei 6. At the beginning of the game, there's not really much explanation for why he went and decided to kill your family, but essentially they're all killed off. You are pinned to a tree with your father's sword. He lights the tree on fire and leaves you for dead. However, you survived this incident, and now you are on your quest for revenge. Now, it's later revealed that she and her brother actually led Lord Saito back to their house while they were out gathering mushrooms, so she blames herself for her family's death, even though he obviously already knew where they lived because they were like probably 50 feet away from the house the entire time during that sequence. But yeah, she feels a deep sense of guilt for her family dying at the hands of Lord Saito. And in the beginning of the game, it's revealed that Atsu's father is this famous blacksmith, and at one point he worked with Lord Saito. Now, at one point he decided to abandon Lord Saito and go live his own life and start a family, and apparently because of this, Lord Saito and his men like starved or something. Like, I don't really know how a blacksmith leaving your company would result in everyone going through mass starvation, but that is the plot that we are left to deal with. And because of Atsu's father leaving, Lord Saito's daughter starved to death, which this is never really explained because Lord Saito and his 2 adult sons survived, but his young child daughter starved to death. So 2 grown men and their father survived, but the daughter starved, even though she would require less food and would have to do less physical activity. Again, the story is completely nonsensical in a lot of cases, but apparently this blacksmith was integral in order for Lord Saito to provide food to his troops and family as an extension, and therefore that is why he is set on his path of revenge to get revenge on Atsu and her family. But he and his Yotei 6 pull up at the house, they kill your family, and it follows the typical revenge bad story slop storyline of Atsu trying to track down the Yotei 6, kill them, and cross their names off her list with their blood.
Creatures such as you and I cannot resist the call of revenge.
Now, throughout this journey, in order to kill the Yotei 6, she does meet one of the companion characters in the game named Oyuki, who is the former Kitsune, which was a member of the Yotei 6. Now, she has recently defected from that group, or more so kicked out, because she didn't want to go along with Saito's evil ways, man, because only men are allowed to be evil in this particular game. Now, it's later revealed to Atsu that she is the Kitsune, and they have this whole coming to Jesus moment, and Atsu forgives Oyuki because that night, Oyuki let her escape temporarily before being caught again and eventually pinned to the tree and having it lit on fire, which this starts the revenge bad storyline of the game because Oyuki is basically trying to dissuade Atsu from pursuing this blind path of revenge, letting her know there's more to life than just hatred, and there's this really weird sexual tension that starts to build between the two, which later comes to a natural natural conclusion that I think everybody saw coming from a mile away if you are familiar with this particular type of Western writing and storytelling. So from this point on, she forgives Oyuki, and she becomes a close ally and teaches, I almost said Naoe, and teaches Atsu the ways of the shinobi and allows her to use an ability similar to Eagle Vision in the Assassin's Creed games, that she uses audio in order to survey the environment and locate enemies around her. She also encounters her long-lost brother, who she finds out survived his gunshot wound to the gut in feudal Japan, keep in mind, and has now been elevated to a feudal lord in the Matsumai family, which is the main feudal lord faction that is at war with Saito. So they become natural allies of yours throughout the game, and you start to rekindle the relationship with your brother, which they reiterate the fact that Atsu was the more capable sibling. She was better at everything than Hyubei, which is his name, and essentially she is the man of the family, so to speak. But together with Oyuki and Hyubei, you dismantle Saito's Yotei 6 and liberate the land, only except the Matsumai are crushed and defeated, and Saito still wins the war, despite you killing and befriending the Yotei 6 along the way and dismantling his entire network of operatives and military. But apparently he still wins in a crushing defeat where the Matsumai clan are completely crippled and essentially destroyed. Now, the game never really explains how Saito's army is eventually defeated, because later on in the game it is revealed that the Matsumai do regain control of the region and are rebuilding their castle, and just some random off-the-cuff dialogue. Like, we never actually get to see these events happen on screen, so kind of odd, man. It's kind of not one of those things that I feel like that should be reserved to a one-off dialogue line, and should be instead shown on screen of how the Saito were driven out of the region by the Matsumai and how they recovered from basically being completely eradicated. But yeah, just the minor story details were missing here. But overall, yeah, we didn't really get any sort of closure on that whatsoever. I mean, I guess since Saito eventually does die, the army just immediately disbanded and said, we give up, which seems very unlikely, but I don't know, man. Maybe that's how it happened back in feudal Japan, no matter how nonsensical it is. But during the siege of the castle, which I mentioned, the Matsumai castle gets destroyed, Atsu is using Saito's son, the Spider, who is one of the members of the Yotei 6, in order to bait the other son, the Dragon, who is also a member of the Yotei 6, into rescuing him by staging a fake execution. Now, Saito, of course, sees right through this, and while he and his other son do confront Atsu, his army apparently descends on the castle, completely undetected, and even though they are still at the castle is left undefended, even though they're all at the castle awaiting the dragon and Saito's arrival. Like, the whole story to this game is completely fucking nonsensical, man. So Saito's forces storm the castle, destroying the Matsumai castle, and you are left with a choice. And this is where the whole revenge bad storyline is really driven home, dude, in case you couldn't figure it out by now. But what happens at this point in the story is the dragon and Saito confront Atsu at the execution site for the Spider, and she is given a choice, man. And at this moment, she has the option to either confront the dragon and fight him, or flee with her brother Hyubei and Oyuki to go and rescue her niece from the castle in order to escape to live another day. Now, Atsu, really to drive home that revenge bad plotline, decides to stay and fight the dragon because she's clouded by her quest for vengeance, and in doing so, she loses track of where Hyubei and Oyuki went. So she eventually defeats the dragon, escapes from the castle, goes to a previous point where they decided in case of emergency we'll all meet here, and while the only person waiting for her there is her niece Kiku, Jubei and Oyuki never made it, suggesting that they had been captured by Saito and are now being held prisoner. So from here, Atsu goes on her quest in order to find out where Hyubei and Oyuki are being held captive, but first, she does take Kiku to her old home in order to be safe, quote unquote, which, if you can't see the foreshadowing a mile away, then I don't know what to tell you. You have zero media literacy whatsoever. But yeah, the foreshadowing is on the next level. She takes Kiku to Hyubei in her old home, which she explains the events that happened there, and while she leaves her there in order for her to be safe, while she goes out on the hunt for the Spider in order to track down where Hyubei and Oyuki are being held by Lord Saito. Now, she goes and tracks down the Spider, and they have like a little clash, but long long story short, it comes down to a talk no jutsu moment where she eventually convinces the spider to turn on his father because he has daddy issues. He gives her access to Saito's castle in order for her to go and rescue Hyubei and Oyuki, and in exchange, she will spare the spider's life, and she forgives him, essentially. So she goes to Saito's palace, and she does rescue Oyuki and Hyubei, which apparently this entire time was just a trap. And in the meantime, Saito was headed to your original home where the game began, man. The place that started it all, baby. Apparently, Saito decided to ride out there single-handedly, no guards, nobody, just him by himself and a horse, because it totally makes sense for the de facto leader of the region to ride out unaccompanied in a war-torn area to go and settle your beef with a random woman. Like, again, the writing in this game is absolutely comically bad. So from here on out, you have to escape from Saito's palace in an epic escape sequence, which leads to you eventually arriving at your original home, which you find Saito sitting down with Kiku playing the coin flicking minigame that you've had to go through many times at this point in the game, completely unguarded by himself. Now keep in mind, Atsu has a fucking gun. In fact, she has 2 guns at this point in the story. She could easily just pull out her gun, shoot Saito in the fucking head while he's sitting down unarmed with Kiku, but instead, no, dude, we gotta have Ma'anaru, and they decide to fight one-on-one, which actually isn't one-on-one, which we'll get to. But during your showdown with Saito, there is a scripted sequence where he disarms Atsu, and as a result, Atsu is basically on death's door. She's about to die, which prompts Hyubei to charge in to defend you. And as a result, Saito skewers him with a sword in the chest, killing him, and you then pick up your sword and finish the fight, man, by pinning him to the same tree he pinned you, driving your sword through his heart, you know, completing the cycle of revenge once and for all until only one person is left standing. But because of the death of Hyubei, Atsu and Oyuki decide that it's time to put up their swords, and they settle on raising Kiku themselves to honor the memory of Hyubei. And that is exactly where the game ends. It literally ends with Atsu and Oyuki essentially becoming a lesbian couple and raising another man's child. Where have we seen something very fucking similar to that before in a modern Sony game? I'll give you a hint. It ends with a 2. But that is the end of the story, man. It's incredibly uneventful. It makes no fucking sense. They never explain how the Saito clan is driven out of the region, because Saito literally just died himself. I would assume he has plenty of generals and military leaders that could easily pick up the mantle and maintain control of the region. But again, we're basically just written off that plot point in a singular line of dialogue where Kiku mentions that they're rebuilding Matsumai Castle. But that is the end of the story. It's essentially revenge bad. When you set out on a quest for revenge, dig 2 graves. All of which has been said before in better stories, man. So this just genuinely was painfully mediocre. All of the major story points were very predictable from start to finish. You already had an idea of where the story was going from the very beginning. And the overall pacing and progression is just slogged down by this comfy cringe mission structure in between the action. When you're finally towards the end of the game and the action is starting to pick up, because this game is a very, very slow burn at the beginning, but when you finally start getting into the more action-based sequences of the main story, they keep dropping these obnoxiously long, comfy cringe missions that involve you going camping with your niece, collecting resources, cooking, and all this random shit where it's like, bro, I just mowed down 100+ samurai. Can I go back to doing that shit now? And the answer is no, dude, because you gotta go light a campfire instead. But that is a very common occurrence in a lot of these type of games where they just unnecessarily pad out the runtime with obnoxious chore simulators. Like, that is not what I fucking want. And on top of that, you have the typical 80-20 Sony story game structure where 80% of the gameplay of the main story is just walk to objective, talk to NPC, watch cutscene, walk to the next objective, listen to dialogue, light parkour mechanics, and then you finally get to engage in combat, rinse and repeat. And this game definitely follows that formula to the fucking letter. And I don't remember, but I might have compared this game to Assassin's Creed Shadows once or twice in this video, but but call me crazy when I say that Assassin's Creed Shadows, I feel like, had actual better pacing and a better story than this game. Now, granted, the gameplay is a lot more refined in this title, and definitely is an improvement over Assassin's Creed, but both feel very, very, very fucking similar, especially with their constant abuse of drawn-out, unnecessary flashback sequences showing the early life of the characters in the game, and it's to a comical degree at times. Like, genuinely, you will get a flashback for no fucking reason whatsoever. But overall, this game just feels really bland and unsatisfying. These Sony movie games only really work if the movie portion of the game is actually good, and in the case of Ghost of Yotei, I just feel like the juice ain't worth the squeeze, man. Like, this is just one of the weaker examples of the Lehekin revenge bad storyline that Sony has released recently, and I genuinely think you would be better off just replaying Ghost of Tsushima and enjoying the combat in that and just skipping the cutscenes, in all honesty, because the story you're getting here is genuinely not worth your time. And when even IGN is getting sick of this formula, you know that it's not just a, oh, the chuds are angry problem. Like, this is an actual thing that people are starting to get fatigued on. The Sony story template is really starting to outstay its welcome. But in conclusion, Assassin's Creed Shadows 2 overall is not a bad game per se. It's just an incredibly boring. For a story as unoriginal and formulaic as it is, it takes way too long to get going, and when it does, it suffers from horrible filler that brings down the pacing to a crawl. Atsu in general is a very unlikable main character and has an even more unlikable actor behind her face and voice, but that's not even the biggest problem. The problem is that you've already played this game earlier this year in the form of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Do yourself a favor, save the $70, replay Ghost of Tsushima instead, or shit, if you really need something else, go out and buy Assassin's Creed Shadows. You can probably get it dirt cheap at this point, and judging by the sales numbers, that game really didn't do too well, so most people probably haven't even played it anyway at this point. So I would almost say that's a better option, because at least you get the comical cringe of having Yasuke in that game. Like, genuinely, I found Assassin's Creed Shadows more entertaining and memorable than this game, because it just feels like a bland copy-paste of Ghost of Tsushima, except let's put a woman in it and make her gay. So overall, if I had to give this game a rating, I'm giving this shit a 5 out of 10. There are definitely better ways to spend your time and money out there, and really, I don't feel like this should be one of the games that you prioritize picking up for even close to full price. When it gets added eventually to PlayStation Plus in a year or two, or if it goes on deep discount, maybe that would be a good time to pick it up and give it a shot. I mean, the gameplay itself is not bad. It's just all the other shit that accompanies it that really drags down the overall experience, and I really don't think people will be talking about this game in even a few weeks. I think this is going to be one of those flash-in-the-pan titles that kind of just vanishes off into the ether. It's already not selling anywhere near the levels that a typical AAA Sony first-party title does. It only sold 1 million copies in its first few days, which is pretty low by PlayStation first-party standards when it comes to their big-budget movie games, so it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of interest in it this time around, and I think that trend is going to hold, because I really don't think there's anything special here. If you have played Ghost of Tsushima or Assassin's Creed Shadows, you have already played this game, and you could arguably say in either case, each one of those is objectively better in some way, shape, or form. But anyway, guys, that is my review for Ghost of Yotei. Let me know your thoughts on this game in the comment section below. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts on whatever game it is we're talking about today on the channel. And, you know, if you made it to this point in the review, I really do appreciate it. This is actually a lot longer than I wanted it to be. I wanted to make a 20-minute Slop review, but I guess here we are, 30+ minutes in. But if you guys could, please drop a like on this video. It does go a long way in helping out my irrelevant-ass channel, and I'm sure the PlayStation fanboys are going to be all over this one like stink on shit, so it is greatly appreciated. And as always, I do want to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to check out this video and for all the recent support as well. You guys are the fucking best, and I really do appreciate it. So with that shit said, I will catch you guys next time.